Hi, I'm Jim Dickinson, your favorite export-import compliance geek. You know, the trade war is hurting a lot of sectors of the economy, and soon your business, if not already. Much of the focus is on the Section 301 tariffs on goods originating from China. We saw duties of 25% on the first three lists of HTS codes. Then we saw List 4 at 10%. But after China imposed retaliatory duties, those duties increased to 30% and 15%. That's the percent of value assessed on imports, but how much of our total imported goods are impacted? Here's what our annual dollar amount of goods imported from China looks like. I'm estimating 2019. List 1 covered $34 billion worth of imports. List 2 was added, bringing us to $50 billion of imports. Then List 3 brought us to $250 billion. Finally, List 4 will take us to $550 billion, nearly everything we import from China. Overall, U.S. companies paid 50% more in duties in 2018 than they did in 2017. But the first of these tariffs hit only in the second half of 2018, and the other half hits in the second half of 2019. So just imagine what 2020 will look like. So what's an importer to do? You can request that your product be excluded from the tariffs, but the windows for filing exclusion requests on List 1 and 2 are already closed. List 3 will close at the end of September 2019. And the process for List 4 has not even been announced yet. But how successful has the exclusion process been? As of June 2019, more than 13,000 exclusion requests have been filed. Of those, 18% have been approved, 55% have been denied, and 27% are still pending. Is there anything else an importer can do to minimize the impact of these tariffs? Here are some alternative strategies you might explore. You could move some or all of your production to some place other than China to have a different country of origin. If you do low-value fulfillment to end customers, you might use a fulfillment center outside of the U.S. to take advantage of Section 321 entries. And if you have multi-tiered transactions, you might want to consider what's called first sale. We'll talk about each of these in more detail. Some companies are simply moving already manufactured goods to another country and just relabeling them, then shipping them to the U.S. The pros: avoiding the 25% duty, maybe, for a while, if you can get away with it, because it's illegal. The country of origin remains China. Simply passing through another country doesn't change that. And Customs is cracking down on this, already fining a number of companies. The U.S. President wants American companies to actually buy or manufacture the product somewhere else. The pro is that you can avoid the 25% duties. The cons include drawing increased scrutiny from Customs, if only because, as I said a moment ago, that they've caught some companies simply relabeling. Quality controls are an issue. The factory workers may not be as skilled. It's not so easy to switch manufacturing. So some companies are doing some manufacturing outside of China, then completing the processing in China. This can work well for electronics. The populating of a PCBA, or printed circuit board assembly, mounting the integrated circuits onto a printed circuit board, is a highly automated process done by robotics. Needing little human interaction, the quality of manual labor is not so much of a problem, so this step in the manufacturing process can be replicated in other countries. But final assembly, putting it into the case with all the buttons, controls, power supply, and final testing, is a more human process where they have quality control issues, will be done back in China, then packed and shipped to the U.S. So why is the country of origin not China, and how does this avoid the Section 301 duties? There are two concepts in customs compliance that come into play here: essential character and substantial transformation. The first is actually related to HTS classification, but it actually comes into play in this situation. In HTS classification, an incomplete or unfinished product that has the essential character of the completed or finished article will be classified as the complete or finished article. And when a product consists of materials that originate in more than one country, the origin is the last country where the product was substantially transformed into a new and different article of commerce with a name, character, and use distinct from that of the article or articles from which it was transformed. Here's an example of essential character. Do you know what this is? Look carefully. This is the original Apple computer. That's all of it, right there. When Steve Jobs and Mike Wozniak started selling these, you basically had to finagle your own keyboard and display. This keyboard looks like it was yanked out of an old Selectric typewriter. The cassette tape deck is your magnetic storage, and behind is your power supply. But Customs would say that this printed circuit board assembly, or PCBA, has the essential character of a complete or finished computer. So it essentially is the computer, and its HTS classification will be that for a computer. For an example of substantial transformation, green beans from Mexico, packaged and frozen in Canada, have not been substantially transformed into a new and different article of commerce, so the country of origin remains Mexico. But for flour, eggs, sugar, and butter from Mexico, mixed and baked into cookies in Canada will have been substantially transformed into a new and different article of commerce in Canada. Therefore, the country of origin will become Canada. So, since that PCBA, the printed circuit board assembly, is the computer, then taking the PCBA made in Vietnam and assembling it into a case with a keyboard and monitor in China will generally not substantially transform it into a new and different article of commerce, so it will generally remain country of origin, Vietnam. I said generally because each situation should be explored on its own merits. The pros, avoiding the Section 301 duties. For the cons, you can bet there will be increased scrutiny when your country of export is China, but you're claiming country of origin, Vietnam. For this reason, I recommend obtaining a customs ruling on country of origin. There have been a number of these rulings granted already. It requires outlining each step of the production process in detail, where everything is being sourced, where it comes together, and what's being done in which country. Unfortunately, there have been some labeling issues in China. Since the final assembly and testing in China is often done in a special economic zone that allows for importing from Vietnam without having to pay duties or taxes so long as the finished goods are exported, sometimes China says that the goods must be labeled Made in China. This would obviously pose a problem when importing into the US, and actually goes against China's own rules of origin that are supposed to be following the WTO guidelines. You may have to label it something like PCBA made in Vietnam, final assembly in China. And that's another reason to get that U.S. Customs ruling. And finally, at least a few weeks ago, there were rumors in the White House about potential tariffs on goods from Vietnam. That's not very likely, but it's not entirely impossible. If you're doing fulfillment of small order internet sales in the U.S., you might consider using a fulfillment center in Canada or Mexico. You can then fulfill them directly into the U.S. duty-free as Section 321 entries. Each order fulfillment must be valued at $800 or less. Orders cannot be consolidated. Each shipment must have its own shipment control number. Each shipment must have a separate consignee name and address. You can't split up orders into multiple shipments. There's a limit to one shipment to each consignee per day. You can't combine orders unless they total $800 or less. The pros are avoiding the Section 301 duties. The cons include your fulfillment costs may very well be higher, but maybe no higher than the Section 301 duties would have been. You may be paying duties into Canada or Mexico, but there can be programs to recover duties or even not pay them for goods destined for export. You could also perform your fulfillment in a free trade zone or a bonded warehouse. You've got to closely manage your fulfillment center. You don't want Monday's late-in-the-day orders to spill over into Tuesday's orders, then risk combining or sending both on the same day. U.S. Customs requires that shipments from the same fulfillment center to the same U.S. customer on the same day be combined into a single entry, and you don't want your customer to get hit with the Section 301 duties. Finally, let's consider using first sale in a multi-tiered transaction, sometimes called a triangular shipment. First, the U.S. importer orders from the trading company. Then the trading company orders from the factory, but the goods are drop-shipped directly to the U.S. Under the first sale provision, the duty can be based on the price of the first sale between the manufacturer and the middleman, rather than the price between the middleman and the U.S. importer. The main requirements are that the manufacturer and the middleman should not be related companies. It must be an arm's-length transaction. If they are related, it's a very difficult process to prove that it is an arm's-length transaction. The first sale must be a bona fide sale. There must be a transfer of title from the manufacturer to the middleman. At the time of first sale from the manufacturer to the middleman, the goods must clearly be destined for export to the U.S. They cannot sit in the middleman's inventory. The pro is reduced duties based on the lower dutiable value. The cons include needing all the contracts, purchase orders, invoices, and records of payment from the first sale from the manufacturer to the middleman. This might be difficult if the middleman doesn't want to reveal his source or his purchase price. You should obtain a customs ruling. Customs will want to know that you are following all the accounting rules on this. Customs actually tried to get rid of the first sale provision, so expect to be highly scrutinized, perhaps audited, to see that you are following the rules. I'll wrap this up with a thought from Voltaire. Uncertainty is an uncomfortable position, but certainty is an absurd one. We don't like the position that the trade war has put us in, but if we really had certainty, we wouldn't be here. We'd already have become rich in the stock market, and we'd be on the beach sipping Mai Tais. Feel free to leave comments or questions in the space below. And don't forget to like this and share with your connections. Thanks for watching, and stay compliant.